Before you begin listening to this lecture, please listen to the motet Ave Dulcissima Maria that is posted on Blackboard and jot down ideas thinking about this. How does this music illustrate the search for order and harmony that characterizes this period? Once you've returned, let's think about your ideas and what the motet did. A motet is a counterpoint polyphony, meaning it includes many voices. It means it is interdependent harmonies that are independent in rhythm and that at points come together. It involves both the Latin and the vernacular, the secular and the sacred, male and female voices. The motet originally referred to a piece in which the accompaniment was superimposed over the main theme, tenor, but had its own text that was different from the tenor. Here in this piece, it's slightly different. Male and female voices join together at intervals to create a sensation of harmony. This also shows the kind of harmony and order that was celebrated in Gothic cathedrals, often dedicated to the Virgin Mary, which is the motif of this motet. And the motet will become extremely popular, especially in the 14th to the 16th century, when this one was composed. The motet was never intended to be a popular form of music. In 1300, Jean de Grouchy wrote, and I quote, "The motet was not intended for the vulgar, who do not understand its finer points and derive no pleasure from hearing it. It is meant for educated people and those who look for refinement in art." End quote. The motet was meant and imagined to create spiritual beauty and experience harmony, and it was created by and for the clerical elite. Now, this shows how the church is distancing itself from the masses of people, a phenomenon that will have repercussions in centuries of people, for all the while controlling and regulating how lay people were to live their lives. This is therefore a period where people were trying to, and I quote from the textbook, find order and unity in the world they believe was created by God. End quote. Now, how else did they do that? That's what the textbook tells you. And I'm going to go over what the textbook teaches us. First of all, we see the search for order and harmony in knowledge with scholasticism, in the church with the Fourth Lateran Council, and in political power with the politics of control. First, let's begin with scholasticism. It is the attempt, as your textbook explains, to harmonize faith and reason, and it epitomizes the medieval synthesis or confidence that, and I quote, knowledge obtained through the sense and reason was compatible with the knowledge derived from faith and revelation. This was the effort made to reconcile the Aristotelian philosophy, that is, human reason could resolve the metaphysical structure of the universe, with Christianity's belief that divine grace and revelation, that is faith, were essential to achieve such an understanding. And this was at the heart of the method, the scholastic Summa. And the greatest representative was Thomas Aquinas. So what characterizes him? Unlike Abelard, he provided answers to sic et non and addressed the most pressing questions of the day. He epitomized how clerics could become philosophers. He began his education in a Benedictine monastery. He studied at the University of Naples, then philosophy in Paris and Cologne, and received his PhD in 1256 in Paris. Over the next 10 years, he spent time in Dominican monasteries surrounding Rome. He was an intellectual in the modern sense. And he took from Aristotle. For him, the human is a rational animal, and the world can be understood through human reason. In this sense, Thomas Aquinas extended Abelard's thought. For him, because of this, humans can understand the universe. But as animals, they can only do so through the senses. He believed in understanding derived through experience, not just thought. Knowledge comes from the experience of the material world. Second, how did the church attempt to achieve order? We see this in different ways: by suppressing heresy, officializing the suspicion of Jews as the only remaining religious minority in Europe, inquisitions, and regulating lay piety. First of all, suppressing heresy by force, which we've discussed. For instance, with the Albigensian Crusade from 1208 to 1229, though the knights who participated in this crusade did it more for plunder than religious zeal. Second, with the Fourth Lateran Council, which was summoned by Pope Innocent III to bring order to the Roman Catholic Church, and your textbook discusses this. The Lateran Council explained there are exactly 7 sacraments. The sacraments are essential for salvations. You need yearly confessions and communion, which are compulsory. Priests performed transubstantiation during Mass, and marriage was now under the jurisdiction of the Church. Then, through the regulation of Catholics' relationship to Jews. So let's see what your textbook tells you. It explains that Jews were required to advertise their religion through an outward sign, and in fact, a round felt sign, which was often the ancestor to what will emerge in the 20th century. They were forced to remain in cities, or they were expulsed from areas, as in England in 1291, and this made them social outcasts. They were forced to work only in a few professions, like usury, which Christians looked down upon. They were subjected to arbitrary taxation, and maybe more important was the role of the council. The Fourth Lateran Council was a defining moment for the life of Jews in Europe because it made official suspicion of Jews living in Christian lands. It legitimated what the textbook calls Christian anxiety, encouraging and sanctioning popular and anti-Jewish myths as sorcerer, as apprentice to the devil, as desecrator of the host, as poisoner of Christian wells, murderer of Christian children, and spreaders of disease. And this especially became strong in and after the 13th century. And the handout that is posted shows a range of woodcuts that would have been understood by many who do not read and write, and that were distributed from the 15th to the 17th centuries. Now, the Fourth Lateran Council officially condoned the myth, such as the blood libel myth, which often became the justification for pogroms. The blood libel myth was the belief that Jews would kidnap children, Christian infants, at particular times and would sacrifice them to drink their blood. A myth and a caricature, of course. The question is, though, why is there a shift towards intolerance and persecution when there had been cohabitation this entire time, only occasionally interrupted by violence, which was also considered to be a norm to solve social problems? Well, we can look at the Inquisition, for instance. In 1231, Pope Gregory IX instituted the spatial papal court known as the Inquisition, which literally means to inquire. Notice how this also echoes the scholastic method. Like the English justices, inquisitors were itinerant. They traveled everywhere, visiting towns within their circuit at regular intervals to find out who were heretics. They would inquire in the community who was a heretic or could be considered as such. Once a heretic had been identified, procedures which were secret would be started with the acceptance of secret denunciations and a denial of counsel. The accused could confess, which resulted in a heavy penance and loss of property. Unrepentant heretics were given to secular authorities to be put to death. But this was actually rather rare in this period. And being put to death would only begin with the witchcraft hunts of the 15th through the 17th centuries. Now, the number of heretics executed never amounted to more than several hundreds, because as fines, confiscations of property, and imprisonments were the usual punishment for most heretics. So the Inquisition was an effective means of social control. And of course, remember, control always involves dissent. Notice that this takes place in the moment where law and justice develop. And this is also what happens with growing political states. Beginning in the 12th century, a continuing trend where legislative, military, juridical, and executive power are concentrated in the hands of some kings. This is the modern genesis of modern states. It reinforces power locally with taxation, governing both a territory and subjects, as in the case of Louis IX, and the states emancipate themselves from the church or find a way to govern with clear boundaries. And Louis IX is also a very good example of this. So we see the tendency to order in states and political regimes, a process that began in the previous century. In effect, kingdoms are increasing their legitimacy and power as they move towards unifying and establishing the rules of law and justice. As the textbooks explains, and I quote, political leaders aimed at order and control to increase their revenues, expand their territories, and enhance their prestige, end quote. This would have lasting consequences for the emergence of nations and states in the centuries to come.